The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats waiting. The air was thick with tension. At the center of the room stood a single figure. Veltar was not much to look at. His gray skin was marked with deep scars. One of his 4 arms hung limp at his side. His large black eyes darted nervously around the room. He was the last surviving commander of the Kethmori Empire. Council Speaker Thexani leaned forward. Her blue tentacles moved slowly as she spoke. "You may begin your testimony, Survivor Veltar." Veltar's voice was quiet at first. "Honored council members, I stand before you today to speak about the humans. Many of you have heard stories. Some call them warriors. Others call them monsters. I am here to tell you the truth." He paused and looked around the room. Representatives from 50 different worlds stared back at him. The Zephyrians with their crystal bodies, the Mokari with their 6 legs, the floating ethereals and their energy fields. All of them wanted to know about the species that had destroyed an empire. 6 years ago, my people controlled 12 star systems. We had ruled for over 1,000 years. Our ships were strong. Our weapons were powerful. We thought we were the greatest force in this part of the galaxy. Veltar's good hand touched one of his scars. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Kethmori Empire had been one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. Their sudden collapse had shocked everyone. It started with exploration. Our scouts found a small yellow star. The 3rd planet showed signs of life. We called it Sol 3. The beings there called it Earth. Veltar's voice grew stronger as he continued. We watched them for months. What we saw made us laugh. He activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the council chamber. Cities with primitive buildings, vehicles that burned fuel, ships that could barely reach their own moon. They fought each other constantly. Wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas. They had divided their single planet into hundreds of territories. Each group claimed to be different from the others. Veltar shook his head. We had seen this before on primitive worlds. It always meant easy conquest. The images changed. Now they showed human soldiers with simple weapons, tanks that moved on tracks, aircraft with propellers and jets. Their technology was nothing compared to ours. Our worst ship could destroy their best city. One of our warriors could defeat 100 of theirs. We had plasma weapons while they still used metal projectiles. We had energy shields while they wore simple armor. Council member Zorax raised one of his clawed hands. If they were so weak, how did they defeat you? Veltar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. There was something like fear in it. That is what I am here to explain. You see, we made the same mistake that many others have made. We thought strength was only about weapons and ships. We thought intelligence was only about technology. We were very wrong about humans. The hologram changed again. Now it showed human faces, men and women of different colors and shapes. Some were young, others old. All of them had the same look in their eyes. It was hard to describe. Determination, maybe. Or stubbornness. Let me tell you about some of the humans we encountered. There was Captain Lee Dongwu of their ship Incheon, a man in his 50s with gray hair and calm eyes. He never raised his voice even when we threatened to destroy his world. Veltar's image showed a human woman in a blue uniform, Engineer Park Sojin. She was small, maybe half the size of our smallest warrior, but she could fix any machine and build weapons from scraps. Another image appeared, a young human man with kind eyes. Medic Kim Tae-ho. He saved more lives in one day than most beings save in a lifetime, even the lives of his enemies. These were not the primitive savages we expected. When we studied their history, we found something that should have warned us. Humans had fought wars for thousands of years, not just simple battles for territory. They had fought wars that lasted decades. Wars that covered their entire planet. Wars where millions died for ideas that had no physical form. The council chamber was completely silent now. Even the translator machine seemed to whisper. They had fought for freedom when they could have lived as slaves. They had died for strangers when they could have saved themselves. They had chosen suffering when peace was offered to them. This was not normal behavior for any species we had encountered. Veltar limped closer to the center of the chamber. His damaged leg made each step painful, but he continued. We sent our standard message to their world: surrender or be destroyed. Every species had accepted this choice before. Some chose surrender and became part of our empire. Others chose to fight and were quickly defeated. But the humans? He stopped and laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. The humans sent back a message of their own, 3 words in their primitive language. We had to use our computers to translate it. Veltar's voice became very quiet. Come and take it. That was when we knew we had found something different. Not just another primitive world to conquer. We had found a species that would rather die than kneel. The images changed one more time. Now they showed space. Darkness filled with stars. And moving through that darkness were ships. Human ships. They were smaller than Kethmori vessels. Their weapons were weaker. Their armor was thinner. But they moved with purpose. What happened next changed everything we thought we knew about war. About courage. About what it means to be intelligent life in this galaxy. Veltar looked directly at Council Speaker Thexani. The humans taught us that the strongest weapon is not made of metal or energy. The most powerful technology is not built in factories. The greatest intelligence is not found in computers. He paused, letting his words sink in. They taught us that sometimes, the most primitive species can be the most dangerous, not because of what they can build, but because of what they are willing to sacrifice. The council chamber remained silent as Veltar prepared to continue his story. Outside the great windows, stars twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere among those stars, humans were still out there, still fighting, still refusing to kneel, and now everyone in the galaxy wanted to know why. Veltar's damaged hand moved across the control panel. The holographic display changed to show 3 massive ships moving through space. They were dark metal, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Each one was 5 kilometers long. These were our warships, Veltar said. The pride of Kethmor, the Iron Fist, and the Star Crusher. Each one could destroy a planet. Together they had conquered dozens of worlds. The council members leaned forward. They had all heard stories about Kethmori ships. Even the most powerful species feared them. We arrived at Earth's solar system with confidence. 3 ships against their entire world. It should have been simple. Land, demand surrender, take control. We had done it many times before. The display showed the human solar system. A yellow star with several planets. The 3rd planet was blue and green, covered in clouds. But as we approached, we detected something unexpected. Ships were moving toward us. Human ships. Small things no bigger than our shuttles. We counted them. 50 human vessels against our 3 mighty warships. Veltar's voice became puzzled. Any normal species would have hidden, or sent messages begging for mercy. But these humans flew straight at us. We intercepted their communications. A new voice filled the chamber. It was speaking in the human language, but the translation appeared as text. The voice was calm and strong. This is Admiral Choi Min-ho of the United Earth Forces. You have entered our space without permission. Leave now or face the consequences. Several council members made sounds of surprise. The voice showed no fear at all. We responded as we always did, Veltar continued. We told them to surrender. We showed them images of worlds we had destroyed. We explained that resistance was pointless. Their admiral sent back a single message. The human voice spoke again. Earth does not kneel. That was the first time we realized we were dealing with something different. But we still thought numbers would win. 3 massive ships against 50 small ones. Simple mathematics. The display showed the battle beginning. The human ships spread out in a wide formation. They looked like insects next to the giant Kethmori vessels. We fired first. Our plasma cannons could destroy a city. One shot hit a human ship called the Busan. It should have been destroyed instantly. But on the display, the human ship kept moving. It was damaged, burning, but it kept flying toward the Kethmori fleet. The captain of that ship was Yu Hee-jin, a young woman, maybe 30 Earth years old. Her ship was dying around her, but she kept firing. Her weapons barely scratched our armor, but she kept shooting. Veltar's voice grew quieter. Then she said something that still gives me nightmares. Her exact words were, "If we're going to die, we're taking you with us." The battle images showed more human ships moving in strange patterns. They didn't try to fight at long range like normal space battles. Instead, they came closer and closer to the Kethmori ships. They were using ramming tactics, flying their ships directly into ours. We had never seen anything like it. What kind of species destroys their own ships to damage the enemy? A human ship on the display slammed into the side of a Kethmori vessel. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. Captain Nam Junki of the ship Gwangju was the first to succeed. His ship was almost destroyed by our weapons. His crew was dying, but instead of retreating, he flew straight at our warship. At the last moment, he overloaded his reactor. The explosion on the display was enormous. When the light faded, both ships were gone. One of our 3 ships was destroyed, by a vessel 1/100th its size. The humans had traded 50 lives to kill 3,000 of ours, and they acted like it was a victory. Veltar turned to face the council directly. This was when we began to understand. Humans do not calculate battle the same way other species do. They don't ask, can we win? They ask, what are we willing to pay? The battle continued on the display. More human ships made ramming attacks. Others fired their primitive weapons until they were destroyed. None of them tried to flee. We destroyed 37 of their ships, but the cost was terrible. We lost the Star Crusher completely. The Iron Fist was badly damaged. Only the Pride of Kethamor was still at full strength. But the humans weren't finished. As our ships tried to repair, more human vessels appeared. These were different. Civilian ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even small private craft. The display showed hundreds of new contacts appearing on the scanner. They had called for volunteers, citizens with no military training flying whatever ships they could find, old men in mining vessels, teenagers in racing ships, mothers in family transports, all of them flying toward our fleet. Council member Rixtal spoke up. His mechanical voice was puzzled. Why would non-combatants join a hopeless battle? Veltar's laugh was bitter. That's what we asked ourselves. So we listened to their communications. Do you know what they were saying to each other? The chamber filled with human voices, men and women speaking in dozens of different languages. The translation system worked to keep up. My grandfather died fighting invaders. I will too if I have to. These aliens think Earth is weak. Let's show them what humans can do. I have children on that planet. Nobody threatens my family. For Earth, for freedom, for the future. We realized something terrible, Veltar said. We weren't just fighting their military. We were fighting their entire species. Every human who could hold a weapon or pilot a ship was coming to fight us. The battle images showed the civilian ships joining the attack. They had no armor, no military weapons, but they kept coming. A cargo ship called the Soul Pride rammed our cruiser's engine section. The pilot was a woman named Kim Young-hee. She was 73 years old. Her ship was carrying medical supplies to a colony world. More explosions filled the display. Human ships died by the dozens, but each death cost the Kethamori something. In the end, we were forced to retreat. 3 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, defeated by a collection of primitive vessels held together with determination. Veltar's voice became very quiet. But that wasn't the worst part. As we fled, we intercepted one final human transmission. It came from Admiral Choi Minho. The Admiral's voice filled the chamber again. But this time it wasn't angry or afraid. It was sad. This is Admiral Choi to all Kethamori vessels. We know you can hear this. We're sorry it had to be this way. If you want to talk instead of fight, we're willing to listen. Humans prefer peace to war, but we will never surrender our freedom. The display went dark. Veltar stood in the center of the chamber looking tired and old. That was our first lesson about humans. They will sacrifice everything they have for things that exist only in their minds. Freedom, honor, the protection of others. Ideas that you cannot touch or measure. He looked around at the council members. We thought we were fighting for territory or resources. Simple things that make sense. But the humans were fighting for something much more dangerous. They were fighting for hope. Veltar touched his scarred face as the holographic display showed the aftermath of the battle. Broken ship pieces floating in space, the darkness between worlds where his people had fled. After our defeat at Earth, we retreated to the asteroid belt, far from their world, far from their weapons. We thought distance would keep us safe. The display showed a field of floating rocks. Some were small, others as big as mountains. Between them, Kethamori ships tried to hide and repair their damage. We had lost one ship completely. The other 2 were badly hurt. But we still had thousands of warriors. Advanced weapons. Technology that humans couldn't understand. We told ourselves the first battle was just bad luck. Veltar's voice grew darker. We were wrong again. The humans taught us another lesson. Distance means nothing when your enemy refuses to quit. The asteroid field appeared peaceful on the display. Kethamori ships moved slowly between the rocks, trying to fix their damage. Patrol ships flew regular routes to watch for human attacks. For 3 months, nothing happened. We detected no human ships. No communications. No movement toward our position. Our commanders began to relax. Maybe the humans had given up. Maybe they realized they couldn't win against superior technology. Then the disappearances started. The display showed a Kethmori patrol ship moving between asteroids. It was there one moment, then gone the next. No explosion. No distress call. Just empty space. Patrol Ship 7 simply vanished. We searched for days but found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies. It was like the ship had never existed. More ships appeared on the display. Supply vessels. Scout ships. Small transports. One by one, they disappeared. Every few days, another ship would go missing. Always the smaller ones. Always when they were alone. Our commanders increased patrols. We sent ships out in groups. Nothing helped. Veltar's good hand clenched into a fist. Then we started hearing voices. Human voices speaking our language. They would appear on our communication channels without warning. Always the same message, coordinates in space. Nothing else. Just numbers. The council chamber was completely quiet. Even the air recycling system seemed to whisper. The first time we heard it, our commanders thought it was a trap. But curiosity won. We sent a scout ship to investigate the coordinates. The display showed the scout ship arriving at an empty patch of space. Nothing there except darkness and distant stars. The ship found nothing, but when it tried to return, it discovered something terrible. The hyperspace beacon that marked their home base was gone. Destroyed. They were lost. That was when we realized what the humans were doing. They weren't sending ships to attack us directly. They were picking us apart piece by piece, like hunters stalking prey. The display changed to show a human woman in a dark military uniform. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and sharp eyes. This was Lieutenant Bae Subin. We didn't know her name then. To us, she was just a ghost, a shadow that appeared when our ships died. She led a team of 12 humans. They called themselves a reconnaissance unit. But they were really hunters. They had studied our technology, learned our weaknesses, and turned our own space against us. The display showed how the humans operated. Small ships that looked like asteroids, weapons hidden inside fake rocks, traps disguised as salvage. They had taken pieces from our destroyed ships and learned how to copy our technology. Not perfectly, but well enough. They could make their ships look like ours on our sensors. They could speak our language. They could predict where we would go. Veltar's voice became frightened. But the worst part was the voices. Always the voices. Whispering coordinates over our communication channels. We would hear them in the middle of the night shift, when our crews were tired and scared. A human voice speaking perfect Kethmori. Grid 7 Alpha 3. Something waiting for you there. Sometimes the coordinates led to traps, sometimes to empty space, sometimes to the wreckage of our own ships left there for us to find. We never knew which it would be. The display showed Kethmori crews becoming more and more frightened. Warriors who had conquered worlds now jumped at shadows. Our crews started having nightmares. They would wake up screaming about human voices calling them into the dark. Some refused to go on patrol. Others begged to be transferred away from the asteroid belt. That was when we heard about Captain Lim Jae-sung. A new image appeared. A human man in his 40s wearing the uniform of Earth's Space Force. His face was calm, but his eyes were intense. Captain Lim commanded a ship called the Daegu. It appeared to be a simple transport vessel. Old and slow, barely worth our attention. But it was always there. Wherever we went, the Daegu would appear on our long-range sensors. We tried to catch it many times. Our fastest ships would chase it through the asteroid field. But Captain Lim always escaped. He knew every rock, every hiding place. He could predict our movements better than our own commanders. The display showed the cat and mouse game. Kethmori ships chasing shadows through the asteroids, the human ship always staying just out of reach. Then our ship started receiving messages, not coordinates this time, personal messages. Veltar's voice became a whisper. Captain Lim would call our ship commanders by name. He would tell them about their families back home, their fears, their secrets, information that no human should have been able to know. To Commander Vexoth, he said, "Your daughter is getting married next month. You should be there instead of dying in this cold place." To Captain Mortak, "Your wife sent you a message last week. You never answered. She thinks you don't love her anymore." How did he know these things? How could a human understand our personal lives? The display showed Kethmori officers becoming more and more disturbed. Some started making mistakes. Others became too scared to leave their ships. We realized that Captain Lim wasn't just hunting our ships. He was hunting our minds, making us doubt ourselves, making us afraid. The final blow came when he contacted our fleet commander directly. Admiral Krell was a veteran of 50 battles. He had never lost a fight. He had never shown fear. Captain Lim's message was simple. Admiral, you have brave soldiers under your command. Don't let them die for a war that cannot be won. Take your people home. Veltar stopped speaking for a moment. The council chamber was completely silent. Admiral Krell tried to ignore the message, but Captain Lim kept talking. He described the Admiral's own tactics, his favorite strategies, his weaknesses. It was like he had been studying our commander for years. Then Captain Lim said something that changed everything. I know you want to protect your people, Admiral. That's what makes you a good leader. But there's only one way to keep them safe now. The display showed the Kethmori fleet moving through the asteroids, but now they were moving away from Earth, not toward it. Admiral Krell ordered a full retreat. After 6 months of hunting and being hunted, we left the solar system. We thought we were finally safe. Veltar's laugh was bitter. But humans had taught us another lesson. They don't just fight for their own world. Once they decide you're an enemy, distance doesn't matter. Borders don't matter. They followed us. The display showed human ships appearing in Kethmori space. Not many at first. Just a few scouts. But they were there. Watching. Waiting. Captain Lim Jae-sung's voice followed us across the galaxy. Always whispering. Always reminding us that humans don't forget. That humans don't forgive. That humans never ever give up. Veltar looked directly at the council members. That was our second lesson about humans. They don't just fight battles. They fight wars. And a war with humans doesn't end until they decide it ends. No matter how far you run. Veltar's remaining good eye focused on something far away, as the holographic display changed. Now it showed a massive ship floating in deep space. It was dark gray, covered with weapon ports and prison cells. This is the Kethmori prison ship Void Keeper, the most secure vessel in our fleet. It held 3,000 prisoners from across the galaxy. Pirates, rebels, anyone who opposed our rule. The display rotated to show the ship's thick armor and defensive systems, guard towers, shield generators, weapon platforms that could destroy anything that came too close. 6 months after we fled Earth's solar system, we captured a small human research vessel near the Rigel system. 5 humans. Scientists studying star formation. They were no threat to us. A new image appeared. A middle-aged human woman in a white laboratory coat. Her hair was tied back and her expression was calm despite being in a prison cell. This was Dr. Oh Min-jung, a scientist who studied how stars were born. She had never held a weapon, never hurt anyone. But she was human and we wanted to use her as a bargaining chip. The display showed the interior of the prison ship, cells filled with beings from dozens of different species, all of them locked away from their homes, their families. We thought holding human prisoners would give us an advantage. Maybe their government would negotiate. Maybe they would stop hunting our ships if we threatened to execute their people. Veltar's voice became puzzled. What we didn't understand was how humans think about their own. Every species we had encountered would sacrifice a few individuals to save the many. But humans are different. The display showed deep space. Empty darkness between distant stars. Nothing moved in the void except background radiation and cosmic dust. 3 months after we captured Dr. Oh Min-jung and her team, our long-range sensors detected something impossible. A single ship was approaching the Void Keeper. A small vessel appeared on the display. It looked like an old cargo hauler. Slow, unarmed, barely worth noticing. We thought it was a supply ship that had gotten lost, but when we tried to contact it, the response shocked us. A human voice filled the council chamber. It was rough, like someone who had been shouting orders for years, but it was also determined. This is Sergeant Kang Seo-jun of the United Earth Marines. I'm here for our people. 1 ship, 1 human, coming to rescue 5 prisoners from the most heavily defended vessel in our fleet. We laughed. It was obviously suicide. The display showed the human ship coming closer. It was old and battered, held together with repairs and determination. We sent a warning, told the human to leave or be destroyed. Sergeant Kang's response was simple. I'm not leaving without my people. Our ship commander decided to have some fun. Instead of destroying the human vessel immediately, he would capture it. Add another prisoner to our collection. The display showed tractor beams reaching out from the prison ship. They grabbed the human vessel and pulled it into the docking bay. What happened next is why humans terrify every species that encounters them. The docking bay filled with Kethmori guards. Dozens of warriors in full battle armor, weapons ready. They surrounded the human ship as it landed. The cargo bay doors opened. We expected to see one scared human surrendering. Instead, 12 humans in combat armor stepped out. They moved like they owned the ship. Veltar's voice became awed. Sergeant Kang Seo-jun was a big man even for a human. But it wasn't his size that frightened our guards. It was his eyes. He looked at our warriors like they were already dead. The firefight lasted exactly 4 minutes. When it ended, 37 Kethmori guards were unconscious or dead. The humans had lost no one. The display showed the aftermath. Kethmori warriors lying on the ground while humans in battle armor moved through the ship. But here's what made no sense. The humans could have taken Dr. Oh Min-jung and her team and escaped immediately. Instead, they did something impossible. They started freeing other prisoners. The image showed human soldiers opening cell after cell. Beings from dozens of different species stumbling out into freedom. Sergeant Kang found a group of Zilani rebels who had been imprisoned for opposing our expansion. Instead of leaving them, he handed them weapons and asked if they wanted to fight. He released a pack of Thrakari pirates who had been captured during raids. Pirates who should have been his enemies. But when they saw humans fighting Kethmori guards, they joined the battle. More and more prisoners appeared on the display. All different species. All former enemies of each other. All fighting alongside the human rescue team. Dr. Oh Min-jung was found in the high security section. But when Sergeant Kang's team reached her, she wasn't cowering in her cell. She was treating wounded Kethmori guards. The display showed the human scientist kneeling beside an injured alien warrior. Her hands worked to stop his bleeding while explosions echoed through the ship. Our guards had been trying to kill her for months, but when she saw them hurt, she couldn't help but try to save them. That's what Dr. Oh Min-jung told Sergeant Kang when he found her. The sergeant's response was, "That's why we came for you. Doc, the galaxy needs people like you." The rescue continued on the display. Humans and freed prisoners working together to take control of the ship. By the time our reinforcements arrived, the prison ship was in full revolt. 3,000 prisoners led by 12 humans had seized control of the most secure vessel in our fleet. But the humans weren't finished. As they prepared to escape, they did something that still makes no sense to us. The display showed human soldiers gathering Kethmori, crew members who had surrendered. They took prisoner everyone who had volunteered to work on the prison ship. But they released all the guards who had been forced to serve there. They somehow knew which of our people were there by choice and which were there because they had no option. More than that, they offered jobs to any Kethmori who wanted to change sides. Veltar's voice became quiet. 17 of our people joined them. 17 Kethmori warriors chose to follow human leadership rather than return to their own fleet. The display showed the prison ship's escape, but it wasn't running from the Kethmori fleet. It was leading a convoy of smaller ships filled with freed prisoners. When they left, the humans took more people with them than we had ever held in that prison. Not just the prisoners they had freed, but our own crew members who had decided to defect. Dr. Oh Min-jung sent us a message before they disappeared into hyperspace. A woman's voice filled the chamber. It was calm and kind, like someone speaking to frightened children. To the Kethmori Empire, we know that many of your people are good beings forced into bad situations. If any of you want to leave, if any of you want to build something better, you are welcome among us. Humans believe in second chances. The display went dark. Veltar stood in the center of the chamber, looking smaller and more damaged than before. That was our third lesson about humans. They don't just rescue their own people. They rescue anyone who needs help, even their enemies. He looked around at the council members. But more than that, they believe that enemies can become friends. That evil people can become good. That anyone, no matter what they have done, can choose to be better. After the Void Keeper incident, our empire began to fall apart, not because humans destroyed us with weapons, but because they gave our people something we had never offered them: hope for a better future. Veltar's voice became very quiet, and hope, honorable council members, is the most dangerous weapon any species can possess. The holographic display flickered and changed to show a peaceful world. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across the sky. It looked beautiful and safe. This was New Kethmor, Veltar said. A colony world we had built for civilian families. No weapons, no military bases. Just homes and schools and farms. 2 million innocent beings trying to live simple lives. The display zoomed in to show cities filled with families, children playing in parks, Adults working in fields and factories. It could have been any peaceful world in the galaxy. After the prison ship incident, our military commanders were angry, embarrassed. They had been made to look weak by a handful of humans, so they decided to teach Earth a lesson. Veltar's voice became heavy with regret. They attacked human colonies, civilian worlds just like New Kethmore, places where families lived and children grew up. The military said it would force humans to negotiate. The display changed to show burning cities, ships firing on defenseless targets, the kind of destruction that left no survivors. 3 human colony worlds were attacked. Millions of innocent beings died, men, women, children, all killed to send a message. The council chamber was completely silent. Even the sound of breathing seemed too loud. We thought this would end the war. Humans would realize they couldn't protect everyone. They would surrender to save their remaining people. Veltar's laugh was bitter and sad. We were wrong again. The human response taught us our most important lesson about their species. The display showed ships gathering in space, hundreds of vessels from across human territory. But these weren't just military ships. The human government declared total war, not just their military but their entire civilization. Every ship, every resource, every person was dedicated to one purpose. But it wasn't revenge they wanted. It was justice. A new image appeared. A human man in an admiral's uniform. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and tired eyes. But there was something in his expression that made him look dangerous. This was Admiral Park Jin-woo. He was put in command of the human response. We expected him to attack our military bases, our weapon factories, our command centers. Instead, he did something we never saw coming. The display showed human fleets moving through Kethmori space. But they weren't destroying worlds. They were liberating them. Admiral Park had studied our empire carefully. He knew which worlds were conquered territories, which species had been forced to serve us, which populations wanted freedom. His first target was the Vegan system, home to the Velthari people, who had been our slaves for 200 years. The image showed human ships arriving at a heavily defended world, but instead of attacking immediately, they sent a message. The Admiral's words were broadcast to every being on the planet. People of Vega, we are humans. We know you have been forced to serve an empire that conquered your world. If you want freedom, we will fight beside you. If you want to stay as you are, we will leave you in peace. The choice is yours. The display showed what happened next. Velthari rebels rising up against their Kethmori overlords. Human marines landing to help them fight. But more importantly, human engineers and doctors arriving to help rebuild. The Velthari had been planning their rebellion for decades. They just needed someone to give them hope that they could win. The humans didn't conquer Vega. They freed it. Then they moved to the next system. And the next? The display showed a map of Kethmori territory. One by one, worlds changed color as they broke away from the empire. It wasn't just military conquest. Admiral Park brought something with his fleets that no other species had ever offered. Immediate aid. The image showed human ships unloading supplies on liberated worlds. Food, medicine, construction equipment. Everything needed to rebuild after centuries of oppression. Captain Song Mi-rae led the diplomatic effort. She spoke 17 different languages and understood dozens of cultures. Wherever human fleets went, she made sure the local people were treated with respect. A human woman appeared on the display. She was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Even in her military uniform, she looked more like a teacher than a warrior. Captain Song had studied history. She knew that conquered people often suffered even after being liberated, so she made sure that never happened with human rescues. Instead of taking control of freed worlds, humans helped them build their own governments. Instead of demanding tribute, they offered trade partnerships. Instead of leaving after the fighting ended, they stayed to help rebuild. The display showed human engineers working alongside alien construction crews, human doctors training local medical staff, human teachers helping to build new schools. But the most shocking thing was what happened when they reached disputed territories. The image showed a world that was half Kethmori, half another species called the Mordani. The two groups had been fighting for decades over territory rights. The humans could have chosen a side, backed whichever group would be more useful to them. Instead, Captain Song sat both sides down and helped them negotiate. It took 6 months, but she got them to agree to share the planet. Kethmori settlers who wanted to stay were allowed to become citizens. Mordani refugees were allowed to return to their ancestral lands. The fighting stopped. For the first time in 50 years, that world knew peace. Veltar's voice became awed. Everywhere humans went, they left things better than they found them. Not just free from our empire, but actually better. Commander Zhang Wujin led the engineering efforts. His teams didn't just repair war damage. They upgraded infrastructure. They built hospitals and schools that were better than anything those worlds had ever had. The display showed the results. Worlds that had been poor under Kethamori rule becoming prosperous under their own leadership. Species that had been enemies learning to cooperate. Our empire was falling apart, but not because humans were destroying us. It was falling apart because they were offering our subjects something better. The final battle came when human fleets reached our home system. We expected them to attack our capital world, to destroy our cities like we had destroyed theirs. The image showed massive fleets facing each other in space, hundreds of ships on each side, weapons ready. But Admiral Park sent a message to our high command, the same offer he had made to every other world. Admiral Park's voice filled the chamber. It was tired but determined, like someone who had been fighting for years but refused to give up. Leaders of the Kethamori Empire, your colonies are free, your military is defeated, but we don't want to destroy your people. Surrender the commanders who ordered attacks on civilian populations. Accept justice for war crimes, and your people can keep their homeworld and their independence. It was a generous offer, more generous than we deserved, but our hardline commanders refused. The display showed Kethamori ships moving to attack, but before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Half of our own fleet turned against us. Kethamori ships began fighting each other in the space above their home world. Officers, who had seen what humans offered, rebelled against their own commanders. Crews who were tired of endless war mutinied against their officers. The civil war lasted 3 days. When it ended, the moderate faction had won. They immediately accepted Admiral Park's terms. The display showed Kethamori war criminals being handed over to human authorities, but it also showed something else. The humans didn't execute the war criminals. They put them on trial. They gave them lawyers. They followed their own laws even when dealing with people who had murdered millions. Some were sentenced to life in prison, others to decades of community service helping to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. But none were simply killed for revenge. Veltar's voice became very quiet. That was our final lesson about humans. Even when they have every right to take revenge, they choose justice instead. Even when they could rule through fear, they choose to lead through hope. Our empire ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Kethamori people kept their homeworld, but now they were just one member of a growing alliance of free worlds. The display showed the current state of former Kethamori territory, dozens of independent worlds working together, trading, sharing technology, helping each other grow. And at the center of it all were humans, not as conquerors but as friends. Species that had been our enemies for centuries now called humans their allies. Veltar looked directly at the council members. That is the truth about humans that every species in the galaxy needs to understand. They don't fight to destroy their enemies. They fight to turn their enemies into friends. And that, honored council members, is the most terrifying power any species can possess.